West Victoria, not far over the border really, including some of my relatives in my hometown of Cobden, was under threat. The south coast of New South Wales also copped it, with more than 80-odd houses destroyed over there. We really dodged a bullet as the high temperatures and the strong northerly winds forecast for our election day last Saturday didn't eventuate. But we're not out of the woods yet. The fire season is far from over. Brett Loughlin from the CFS is Regional Commander of Region Number 1, and he joins us now. G'day, Brett.
Good afternoon.
How are you going?
Very well.
We have dodged a bullet so far, haven't we? We've been very, very lucky.
We have been very lucky. We've had some significant fire weather days, and this season it is very dry. It's been, in some places in the hills, it's been over 100 days now since meaningful rainfall. So, yeah, it's a very, very dry season.
Now, people who don't have a thorough understanding will probably think, oh, look, the weather's cooled down. We had a bit of rain overnight and so forth. A bit of storm came through. Everything's all okay. That's far from the truth, isn't it?
It unfortunately is. I wish it was the case, but we still have a lot of fire season to get through. We have at least another month worth of fire danger season, and with how dry it is, it will simply take one bad day, one hot day with a bit of wind, and we could have very interesting fire behaviour.
And that's exactly what happened in Western Victoria last weekend, as I said. And that started, the one that threatened my hometown of Cobden, where I grew up, and a couple of rallies, they lost everything through there. It started simply with a lightning strike at a power substation, a little town called Terang, and it went from there. And I watched the video, and I tell you what, it was going like the clappers.
It's a very aggressive fire, that. It was being influenced by very strong winds, and those were the same winds that we saw sweep through South Australia during Election Day, and particularly overnight we saw winds, that were 70 gusts, 90, even stronger in some parts. We actually had in the Fleurieu Peninsula several fires start by lightning in a small cluster, and those fires certainly had the potential to spread and be quite damaging. But fortunately, we were able to get hold of them before that was able to occur.
That's one of the things too, isn't it? We've got to applaud you guys. The fact that you have been standing by every moment, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week over this season. How many aircraft you've got on standby around the place?
We have dozens at strategic locations around the state, supported by volunteers who drop everything to go out and reload those aircraft and keep them flying. In my region alone, I'm in charge of 84 fire brigades with 3,200 of the finest volunteers you could ever find, and the work they're doing is nothing short of incredible.
I've noticed just over the years, your response time seems you're jumping on fires, outbreaks faster and faster almost every time.
We are very fortunate, and I think that's part too. The public works with us a lot better now. They're reporting fires a lot more quickly, and then we're able to get better information than probably we did, in years gone by. So, we are very fortunate that a quick response is able to contain a lot of fires, but there will come those days where the winds are so strong and it is so hot and dry that despite our best efforts, we won't be able to stop the fire.
We're talking to Brett Loughlin. He's the Regional Commander of Region 1 Commander for the CFS. Region 1, what area are we talking about?
So I'm very fortunate. I'm in charge of the Adelaide Hills, the Fleurieu Peninsula,
lucky
and
man.
Kangaroo Island. Yes, all the lovely places.
Yeah, lucky you. Crikey, you didn't hide quick enough when they asked for volunteers.
Something like that.
Last man standing. So one of the problems I would imagine you suffer is people living in the suburbs not realising they can be under threat just as much as anyone else.
Very much so. And we've put a bit of effort into our advertising campaign this year about people knowing their risk and understanding that just because you live in a suburb of Adelaide, that particularly if you're in some of the suburbs like Mitcham and places like that, you are, right up against the hill face and you're very much in the danger zone. And we actually saw that sort of really come to light from the fires in California late last year, where they saw suburbs very similar to what we have around Adelaide, heavily impacted by fire, substantial property loss, and it really does highlight that risk.
Now, one of the other things about that the fire last weekend in New South Wales, in the little township in southern New South Wales, you saw the aerials, and it's tragic. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Having been, part of Ash Wednesday, I covered Ash Wednesday, and there's nothing more heartbreaking than walking into a town that's just been wiped off the face of the earth. 3 houses in a row wiped out. one still standing untouched. Another one wiped out, another one untouched. It is so ad hoc, isn't it?
It really can be. And, that's why we urge people to do some property preparation.
Yeah, so that was my question. How do I try to get myself onto the list that I'm going to survive this?
Definitely. So we know that a lot of the properties were lost in Tathra, which was a little township, by ember attack. And we know that waves of embers came in by that strong wind and just set the properties on fire. So we're looking for properties that are more likely to survive are ones that have been well built, well prepared for the fire season, so not having leaves in the gutters, not having your winter wood pile still up beside your house, in summer, and having a bushfire survival plan so that you know what you'll do, where you'll go, what you'll take, and these plans also have in them what steps you can take to really prepare your property to give yourself the best chance. Unfortunately, we know that no matter what you do, sometimes it may not be enough. But, if it was my house, I'd certainly like to know that I had done everything possible.
Do you shudder when you drive around some of the back roads up around the hills, particularly? I mean, I know I do. Up around Crayfors and Stirling and so forth, I absolutely tremble with fear when I look at how close the trees are hanging over the... I mean, if a fire went through there, you wouldn't have a hope in hell.
It is a bit disappointing at times, and despite our best efforts and despite the recent fire history around this country, so that it is a well-known risk, I think. People still don't necessarily do the steps that we would like them to undertake. But, then again, many people live in the hills and live in these environments for reasons. And as long as they accept that the risk that they're putting themselves at, then I think that's ultimately fine. Do
you think part of that problem is the fact that the last big one we had through there was Ash Wednesday? God forbid that we ever have a repeat of that. But it was 1983. Awful lot of people up there probably weren't even around.
That is a challenge, trying to get people to understand that just because there hasn't been a big fire for so long, that they're still in an area where that's very much a risk. And that is something that we regularly try to promote and communicate to communities through our community engagement activities, the bushfire ready communities that we do. We are trying to get people to understand that there is a risk to the hills, and that they do need to undertake those property preparation measures.
We'll go through the steps of putting together a bushfire plan in the moment, because I suspect there's a lot of people out there still haven't got a plan.
I suspect you're probably right, and it isn't as daunting as it might sound.
Yeah. What you mentioned that we've got the Adelaide Hills, for example, end of April, so we've got a whole month yet of danger season up there.
Correct. So we've got for other parts of the state, the Northeast Pastoral and the Northwest Pastoral, their season will actually end at the end of this month, so that's fortunate for them. On the 15th of April, the season will end for the Eastern Eyre Peninsula, the Flinders, the Lower Eyre Peninsula, the Murraylands, the Riverlands, and the Upper South East and the West Coast. For the rest of the state, so that's the Adelaide Metro, Kangaroo Island, Lower South East, Mid-North, Mount Lofty Ranges and York Peninsula, that'll be the end of April. So there's still, like you said, a lot of fire danger season to get through.
And the fact that we've had such an incredibly dry January, February means that it's that fuel load A is heavy, B it's incredibly
it's
dry.
To go. It is. And like I said, it will just take that one hot windy day, and we could see fires do some disastrous things. So that's always our concern, and will remain concerned until we see good rainfall around the area.
Yeah, and that's not being forecast anytime soon either. We're talking to Brett Loughlin, who is with the CFS. He's the Commander of Region 1. Lucky him. If you've got any thoughts or any questions for Brett, give us a call, 8223 0000. The message is the bushfire season is far from over, so we'll be happy to give you some advice if you want to call us, 8223 0000. 13 minutes away from 1 o'clock, or for 2 o'clock actually, 8223 0000. I just noticed the clock on the computer here is an hour slow. Oh, dear. Computers, don't you love them? We've got Brett Loughlin here from the CFS telling us a very important message that the bushfire season isn't over. Brett, what we might do is we might run a little package that is a very timely reminder of what things were really like. The last big fire we had, of course, we had Samson Flat. Disaster, but we also had Pinery, and it was an absolute unbelievably scary situation because the winds were so strong. Here's how we covered it here on 5AA.
The fire burning out of control towards the town of Malalau. The CFS says it's threatening lives and property.
This is a fast-moving fire under catastrophic conditions. We currently have exhausted all available aerial resources.
I'd never seen smoke approaching our property that high and that big.
What if you ran away? What if you left the day? We say goodbye to safe and sound.
Fire either side, left and right, as far as the eye could see.
Firefighters are being burnt and we are not able to bring it under control.
We'll never be able to rebuild, never. It's taken us years, sorry.
And when the lights start flashing like a photo booth and the stars exploding, will we fireproof?
The fire is engulfing itself towards us at this location. Over.
Incredible risking themselves with their equipment and their lives. They're running through the paddocks as we speak.
Burn over, Scotty. Burn over. Burn over, Scotty. Jesus Christ. Burn over.
What we went through on the road is worse than coming back to this. It was terrifying. Don't hesitate. Go.
But what if we start to drive? What if we close our eyes? We're speeding through red lights to paradise.
The option to leave and waiting for the smoke to come over the horizon is just way too late.
Yeah, coming this way. Holy. Look how quick it's moving. I've got to turn this truck around.
And when the lights start flashing like a photo booth and the stars exploding, we'll be fireproof.
Everything's gone, whole lot, everything. There's not a thing standing.
When I woke up yesterday morning, there's no way I thought this is what we'd be dealing with today.
We've lost a friend. But we've lost a lot, but it's nothing like a life being lost.
Brett, I've got goosebumps. You, as a firefighter and as a commander of Region 1, that must give you shivers up the spine.
It's very powerful, and particularly hearing the radio calls from our own people who found themselves, in compromised situations throughout that day, as they gave, literally their all to try and put that fire out. And unfortunately, those conditions and days like that, we've had one, we will have those days again. There is very little we can actually do once a fire starts under those conditions.
And that was a really good illustration of that, wasn't it? Mercifully, not many lives were lost. There were a couple of lives lost, about 80 houses, I think. But it could have been a lot worse because the conditions were unbelievable that day. The wind was so strong.
It was absolutely terrible. And we got well into the catastrophic. So the catastrophic fire danger rating is, the old ratings used to go from 0 to 100, and anything above 100 was catastrophic. And we got well above 100 on that day, and it was just an awful day. And I was sitting in our command centre in Region 1, and we were obviously sending some help to the fire at Pinery, but also sitting there very nervously hoping that we didn't see a fire start in our part of the world because we were experiencing those same conditions. And like I said, there are those days when the fire service is powerless to stop a fire like that.
There was nothing that could stop it because the wind was so strong. The other interesting thing is the wind change at the last minute. We could have lost the Barossa Valley. We could have lost the entire valley that day.
Was, and that is often the case for our worst fire weather days. We get those hot north-northwesterly winds followed by a quite aggressive south-southwesterly change, and eventually once the change goes through we do see conditions moderate, but for that period as the change is coming we see very, very dangerous fire conditions. We see the flank of the fire turn into the head of the fire, and it's a real dangerous situation.
The one I thought was interesting too, going back to last weekend's fire in Western Victoria that started at Terang, headed down towards Cobden. If it had got beyond Cobden and into the Timburn region, if anyone's familiar with the region, that would have been another Ash Wednesday because it was all bushland down there. It would have went like crikey. The fire was really, really active overnight. Now that's quite unusual, isn't it?
It is. We are unfortunately seeing more of it, but the age-old adage used used to be, worst fire behaviour was during the day, but unfortunately that's just not the case anymore. And you are right, those fires in southwest Victoria, there are emergency warnings, evacuation orders, all these sort of messaging going out, at 1 a.m, and that's is just a sign of just how dangerous those fires actually were.
So it brings us to the point. We're not out of the woods yet. We've got at least a month, possibly longer. If I haven't got my bushfire survival plan, how do I do it? If I haven't got one, I'm a naughty person because I should have one. But what do I do? It's an easy step, isn't it?
It is. It is not that onerous, and the best way to do it is to sit down with your family. You can download the plan from our website. And it takes only about 5 minutes to actually work out the basics of your bushfire survival plan. The first thing is, are you going to stay and defend under certain conditions? And is your property prepared, and are you fit and able to do that? If not, what are your trigger points for leaving? And, on catastrophic days, on those worst fire danger days, we're asking people to leave that morning before there is actually a fire, because as we heard in that recording there from the Pinery fire, the gentleman said as the smoke came over the horizon, it was far too late, and that is the clear message. So working out what your triggers are, working out where you're going to go and what you're going to take. We know from research done post the Victorian fires, when people left at the absolute last minute, they didn't take any identification with them, they didn't take scripts with them, they didn't take medication, and in the days afterwards, there were many people who had to go through an onerous process to actually prove they were who they were, and then to get, visit doctors, and where doctors' surgeries had burnt down, it was very difficult for them to go, I know I take a tablet a day and I can barely remember what it's called without the scripts, so I would be lost if I didn't have that sort of thing taken with me. And then, knowing where you're going to go is just so important. And on a catastrophic day, it might be you head down to the beach for the day, or you head to into the city and you just spend a day away from those high-risk areas. If there's a fire that is at a watch and act level, that's the time we're saying, start acting now, start, getting out of the area, and then knowing where you're going to go. And it might be down to family, friends. It might again be down to the city, just somewhere safer. But having that all worked out is very, very important. And hopefully the listeners are getting a sense that it's not that hard to do.
No, it's not. Just to have a list and a little kit together, on a stinking day, and have a plastic container there with your scripts and your IDs and your passports and your family photos and so forth, ready to go. Have it by the back door and just grab it as you go. One of the things that terrifies me of the prospect of a fire in the heartland of your region, the Adelaide Hills, is just how crammed some of the roads will get if people leave it too early.
Too late
to get out.
Exactly.
There's some narrow roads up there, 25 cars on one road, one tree comes down, you're all buggered.
It is, and so that is about knowing your risk. And, if you live in some of these higher risk areas, it's about understanding that risk and knowing what steps you will take to mitigate it. And it's like any other risk that you might face with your family. People lock their doors at night because they're afraid of being broken into. We're just asking that people, in planning for a fire event, do one of these plans and have a good think about some of those issues you've just raised.
And the website is cfs.sa.gov.au. Go on there, and I've got it. I live down in the suburbs, but I've got a bushfire plan already, and it's a no-brainer. It only does take 5 or 6 minutes to do, so it's actually quite good, and it gives you a sense of confidence that it will be okay if the dreadful day does arrive. Let's hope it doesn't. So it's cfs.sa.gov.au, and mate, all we can do is keep our fingers crossed that it won't happen, but something tells me it will. It might not be this year, it might be next year, it might be the year after.
And that is the unfortunate truth. We are well overdue for a significant Ash Wednesday style fire in the Adelaide Hills, and we're preparing for it. And I urge the listeners to take those steps themselves. Yeah, fantastic. Great advice, Brett. Let's hope that we can get through this season at least. That website again is cfs.sa.gov.au. All the information is there that you need, including setting up your bushfire plan. Good to see you, mate. Pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. Let's hope you have a nice, easy rest of the month. Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. Good on you.